I was looking at the class a little bit, and I noticed that one of the concepts in the first lesson you talk about is LRA or LRA. I think it's how you call LRA. Could you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. This is a a concept that's really it's so simple. It seems like absolute common sense, but then when you really start to break it down, and having now taught for quite a few years record production and engineering, it's amazing how people discard this. And usually when people get in trouble in their projects, it's because you can trace it back to just this simple common sense approach that maybe was skipped.
Right.
So it's basically just LRA, and the three what it stands for is listen, respond, and act. And let's break those down a little bit. So first off, it's amazing how much people don't listen. In the studio, you get into your DAW world, and you're pulling things up, and you're doing things, and it kind of becomes about the process. Same thing with if you've got a session with people in front of you, it's about just getting the signal flow going, and making sure the mics come in the right place, and getting signal into your Pro Tools rig or whatever, and and then you go to use a compressor or EQ, and there's all these flashing lights and cool graphics, and it's all great, but it's so amazing how people don't listen the way that they should, which is why I think critical listening and music production analysis are such great courses for people to really take a deep breath and remember why they love music in the first place, and why it works, and what the components are, and what the the elements of really effective records are. So first off is listening. The second thing is to respond. And I know this seems like common sense, but so often I think, especially once people have some experience in the studio, they think they're hearing things, but they're listening on just part of their person. Either they're listening just entirely technically, so they're just hyper focused on, is there noise in the signal, or is there too much bass, or is it out of phase, or they have a few technical things that they've kind of learned that they're super hyper focused on. Or they're just listening on an emotional level, which is it's good to listen emotionally, but you also want to notice if you're distorting terribly, and if you're not really getting what you need. So responding on all levels, on an emotional level, is the emotion there in the performance? Do I understand what's going on here in the lyric, and is that moving me? Am I being swept up into it? Why is it that I'm not responding to that? Well, maybe it's because there's this awful guitar or hi-hat that's just poking me right in the ear, so I'm not that's drawing my attention away. Respond to what it is that you're hearing. You're not this is we're really entering an era now. I think we're in the era where the producer and the engineer have, on so many projects, become the same person. So we're asking, ourselves and our professionals who are doing this, to operate on so many levels at once. And the real challenge I find when I'm producing and engineering at the same time is just kind of going between left brain and right brain thinking, where I am thinking about signal flow, and I am thinking about noise, and I am thinking about, phase, and I'm thinking about all these issues. And then also, interfacing with an artist who's a living, breathing human being with needs and insecurities and the potential to do amazing things, and trying to have all this going on at once. So being able to listen and then respond to what you're hearing, and actually think, what, I'm not liking what's going on in the guitar now. Why is that? Let me think. Let me respond to why that is. Okay, you know what? There's a buzz. Actually, there's a big buzz. So then the third thing is act. Actually, I can't tell you how many times a student, one of my production students that I'm mentoring, will come in to a seminar or a class, and they'll play their project for us. and everybody will say, "Oh my gosh, this pulled me out of it. The vocal is absolutely buried. I can't understand it," or whatever, any number of things that could be going on, and the producer who made that track will say, "Yeah, I noticed that as it was going down, but there was so much going on. I mean, we had just spent all this time tweaking the kick drum, or whatever. They failed to act. It's like they were listening, they had a response, but they didn't follow it through to actually act." And it's so important, especially when you're recording with a room full of musicians, to make sure that what you're doing, because that's potentially a hard thing to put together. It's either going to be very expensive to either hire them in again, or if it's a band, that's making a record that you're working with, just, getting everybody together, getting everybody set up, getting all the sound, once it's there, you've got to make sure that what you're getting is what you want. So you've got to listen, you've got to respond, and then you've got to act. You've got to take swift action in a case like that, to where you can make sure that you are getting what you need and everything is going to come out the way that you want it to be. So that's, there's so many examples of how this works. But really, it's just like one of those, one of those common sense things that you can keep going back to. And I often notice, just myself in the studio when I'm in there, and maybe it's been a long day, and maybe I'm a little tired, or maybe, I'm getting ready to listen to a mix, or I'm getting ready to produce a band. Just thinking, okay, listen, respond, act, listen, respond, act. So, just kind of differentiate from, okay, we were getting ready to do this. Okay, now we're really going to do this,
Right.
And if I'm working with a singer, we're finally ready to start recording. Okay, I can forget about the signal chain. Now my gig is to listen and to respond and to act and to help them do the best work that they've ever done, hopefully.